Good morning. My name is Joseph Brady, and I head the research department at the Colorado Chinese Medicine University. And this is Song Tao Xu, and he's the president of the college. And I'm here to introduce our speaker, which let me make sure I get his credentials right. Okay, so again, Ken is an internationally known Qigong master and health educator, and has been practicing Qigong, Tai Chi Chuan, and related Chinese martial and cultural arts since 1968. The first person to lecture about Qigong in the U.S. medical schools. He's a recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award in Energy Medicine. Ken's work has also been sponsored by the American Cancer Society, the Mayo Clinic, the Canadian Ministry of Health, and numerous universities. He's the author of The Way of Qigong, The Art and Science of Chinese Energy Healing, and has published more than 200 journal articles. Without any further ado, Ken Cohen.
Thank you. Am I on? Yes? Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Zhou and Dr. Brady and Colorado Chinese Medicine University and all of the other people that helped to host this wonderful inaugural event. Very excited to offer a little bit that I know about Qigong. Now let's wait for this to start working. There we go. Okay. You can all hear me all right? Yeah. So I wish we had, it really is an honor to be here with all of you. I just wish we had more time, because speaking about Qigong, probably shouldn't say this, you don't really know what it is. I mean, you sort of get an idea, but you really have to experience it, as with Tai Chi Chuan. Once you experience it, you'd be surprised. I know, a lot of people think, well, my doctor's not going to believe in this, or how can I use it as complementary healthcare if the doctor knows nothing about it? If they know nothing about it, they're not reading the medical literature, because we are way beyond the burden of proof. We've got a lot more clear evidence for the efficacy of Qigong than many conventional medical treatments for certain conditions. I mean, they work well together. Frankly, if I had a bacterial infection, I would go to my medical doctor. I'd go to my primary care and get the antibiotic. And if I was in a car accident and I needed my bones mended, I'd want to be in the hospital.
I'm right out there.
But there are times, especially for long-term chronic conditions and for certain acute conditions, that Chinese medicine, including Qigong, is really extraordinary. I mean, in a certain way, Qigong is like acupuncture without the needles. That is, you're learning to regulate your own flow of qi, of life force, through an elegant combination of posture, movement, breathing techniques, visualization, and meditation, so that any dams in the river of life force are opened up. And as a result, the areas that had too much energy are drained out. Those that had too little energy are filled up. So we learn to do that through our own exercises, meditation, self-regulation techniques. It doesn't mean it's a substitution for acupuncture, but it's a complement to it, as it's a complement to Western medicine. There are times where our own personal skills are not enough, right? Sometimes we have to be humble enough to ask for help when we need it. That's a big part of it, because
and I already told my
patient, or in my case, usually the student, is not receptive, then it's really not going to work. There has to be some, or at least it's not going to work as well. I mean, I have worked on skeptics, yes. I know I'm diverting. I was going to show the slides, but you don't mind me telling a few anecdotes, do you? No? So I remember when I was invited to the University of New Brunswick in Canada to do a series of talks on both Daoism, which is the philosophical root of Qigong, and Qigong. I was invited by the chair of the psychology department, who is a Chinese gentleman and was very familiar with my work. And I could tell there was one person in the audience who was really fidgeting and uncomfortable being there. He had a sort of professorial look, if you know what I mean. I figured he was probably a professor at the university, and for some reason, He either didn't like me or what I was saying, or just had rejected everything about Qigong out of hand. He didn't even care about the evidence. Well, sure enough, at the end of my talk, the chair of the psych department who had invited me introduced me to that very gentleman. And we walked together to the parking lot. I asked him what he did. He said he was a scientist with Agriculture Canada, and was studying the effect of radiation
They're all
on
set up and
germination
ready to go,
of
and if we
potatoes.
have a glitch in terms
That
of
was his
time, I'll
I
make
said,
it up
what
on
brought
my
you here?
time.
He said, well, frankly, I wasn't interested in any of this, but Dr. So-and-so, the chair of the department, invited me, and we're good friends, so he came along. I said, so what do you think? He said, well, it's so different, I'm not sure. And I don't know what got into me. I mean, sometimes I get in a sort of ornery mood. I don't know what got into me. I said to him, if you experienced the Qi, do you think you might believe in it then? Yeah, I guess so. But here's what, this is not my, believe me, this is not my usual way of behaving, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway. I put my hand on, I said, should we try an experiment? We were right at the edge of the parking lot. He said, sure. I put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, let me see if I can help out perhaps with your wrist problem. Seems like it's a chronic inflammatory problem. He said, oh, did Dr. So-and-so tell you I have carpal tunnel syndrome? I said, no, I did an internal scan, and that's what I'm sensing. Would you like me to try? He said, where, right here? I said, yeah, of course. So I put one hand on top of his wrist, one underneath. And, some people think that why Qi Alpha, extending Qi beyond one's body to a client. It's another aspect of Qigong. Some people think that's always done without touch, as a sort of non-contact therapeutic touch. But it can also be done with the hands on the body, as a kind of energetic laying on of hands. So I placed one hand on the top of his wrist, one underneath, and put myself in a Qigong state. That is the posture and quiet breathing, lower the metabolic rate. My heart rate usually is about 45 beats per minute, but it'll drop lower than that when I'm doing Qigong. I have a low respiratory rate as well. So I put myself in that mind-body state. I didn't try to do anything. The first method of treatment and external Qi healing, where you're acting as the healer for a client, is just to be present, just to de Qi, right? You acupuncturists should know that word. You reach the Qi, you touch the life current. And the secondary after that are all the specific treatment protocols. So I simply tuned in. And I asked him afterwards, I was standing there for 5 minutes. I said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, I felt some warmth. I thought, okay, that's often the first subjective Qigong, Qi feeling that you get, subjective impression that energy is flowing. No, maybe it didn't help. Maybe it did. I wasn't sure. 4 days later, there was a going away party in my honor. I'd been lecturing at the university. I'll never forget this party because it was a bring your own lobster party. And lobsters back then were probably about, I don't know, $3 a pound, especially in New Brunswick. Well, the scientist from Agri-Canada was there, and he was very excited to speak with me, the one who had been so skeptical. And I said, how are you doing? He said, well, I think I'll believe in Qigong for the rest of my life. I said, why do you say that? He said he felt and saw something in his body when he was going to sleep. Some flowing something or other, energy, something. And when he woke up in the morning, the pain that he'd had for years was completely gone, and he canceled his scheduled surgery, and the pain never came back. This is a long roundabout way of saying that, yes, it does work even on skeptics, but it helps if at least you're open to the possibility of healing. It's not that you have to believe in acupuncture for it to work, but if you're open to the possibility, it's more likely to work. Yeah. This is a little bit away from the subject, maybe gives you a kind of sense of who I am. Yeah. So, Qigong is a small but important part of Chinese medicine, which really has so many components, way beyond this, by the way. This is just the barest summary of 7 major facets of Chinese medicine. Thankfully, of both traditional Chinese medicine and classical Chinese medicine, which, by the way, don't always match. That's another story. Let's save that. If we have time, we can circle back to it. But I think this is pretty much self-explanatory. You see acupuncture and herbal medicine, but that's not everything that comprises Chinese medicine. You've also got massage therapy. That's the Tuina, T-U-I-N-A, you see it? That's Chinese massage therapy. Tuina includes all kinds of techniques, including acupressure, because some of you might be thinking, well, why isn't Zhiya, Shiatsu on there? That's included within Tuina. And Taiji Chuan and the Qigong. By the way, this T-A-I-C-H-I is an Americanization. A lot of people think that Taiji, it's a completely different word, that Taiji has the word Qi in it. No, it doesn't. But this Americanization has T-A-I-C-H-I. It's actually, the CH is pronounced like a J. So Taiji Chuan can develop the Qi, but the word Qi is not in the name of it. You got that? Yeah. Taiji means the balance of complementary opposites, like inhale and exhale, upper body and lower body, inside and outside, right and left hemispheres of the brain, male and female, solar and lunar. All of these complementary opposites, when they reach a balance, that balance point is called Taiji. In fact, you could, if you look at it etymologically, the word yin, you've all heard of yin and yang, right? So yin means the shady side of a mountain. If you look at the structure of the Chinese character, and yang is the sunny slope of the mountain. The peak of the mountain, where they meet, where they are undifferentiated, where we're in a state of unity, that is the meaning of Taiji. Yeah, so Taiji is the balance of opposites. And dietary therapy, I actually know some people that treat primarily through Chinese dietary therapy, and it works. It may not be enough for certain conditions, but always important, because that's the medicine we're taking in every day. That was part of my apprenticeship with my beloved teacher, Huang Gongshi. He was a Daoist abbot. I was his only apprentice during his lifetime. He was born in 1910. And I loved going over to his home, usually about 3 times a week, and cooking meals for him, because he would describe the medicinal properties of every ingredient. And when we go out to eat in a restaurant, he'd say, well, order this and order that, because this is what it will do for you. So I kind of learned in a very practical way, before I started reading books about it, how to adjust the diet to the needs of the particular person or whatever health challenge they're facing. So dietary theory, very important, a big interest of mine. I've given actually numerous lectures in medical schools called From Green Tea to Omega-3, the Tao of Diet. Doesn't that sound interesting? And the moxibustion, cupping. So all of these are part of that rich tapestry of Chinese medicine. So what is Qigong? Here's my definition. It's a little bit different than the standard definition in China, but let's start with that. And my definition is a kind of work in progress. That is, if you ask me on another day, I might include other aspects of Qigong. I think this is a pretty good summary. It's the art and science of using posture, movement, breath, visualization, and contemplation to refine, gather, and circulate life energy. Does anybody recognize the photo to your left up there? You know who that is? Xu Yun Fashi. Xu Yun Fashi. 我的老师是他的弟子. That person is Empty Cloud. He was responsible for the revival of Buddhism in modern China. A very revered Buddhist master. That is him at age 120. documented age. I'm saying documented because there's a tendency in the literature for ages to be greatly exaggerated. I even read of one person who claimed to be 250 years old. Do I believe it? No. Do some people believe it? Hate to say it, but yes. But this is someone who actually lived to age 120. And my primary teacher, Dr. Huang, was both a Daoist abbot and a Buddhist master. And he had been a disciple, among his other teachers, of this person, Empty Cloud. And I think his longevity was not specifically from Qigong, but from a life of meditation. Doesn't mean he had no stress. It means he mitigated the effects of stress. So a life of meditation, pilgrimage, and nature. I agree with a lot of this modern research that so many people are suffering from nature deficit disorder. And Qigong or Tai Chi Chuan practiced outdoors in the natural world, you get so much more benefit than practicing in an indoor environment. The official definition in China from the book Zhongyi Qigong Xue, which I co-translated and co-edited, that's the only official textbook on medical applications of Qigong used in the Chinese healthcare system today. And they do have, I think, a very elegant definition. Qigong is a mental and physical skill and practice that tunes body, breath, and mind, bringing them into unity. Yeah, also, I think a very good, very elegant definition. So why would a person practice Qigong? You know, Qigong has become famous, as with Tai Chi Chuan in the US, for the health benefits. Tai Chi Chuan interfaces with Qigong in that regard, even though Tai Chi Chuan is a little bit different because it was developed primarily as a martial art. And in fact, I know we have some esteemed Tai Chi Chuan teachers here, and in our second year of training, we were already putting on the protective gear and boxing gloves. And luckily, I think luckily, the school where I trained was right down the block from Jun Ri, legendary Taekwondo master. So his black belts would come over to our school and we loved sparring with them. They loved sparring with us because our hands were really quick, but their feet were fantastic. So I learned how to avoid lightning fast kicks, especially roundhouse kicks from them. So Tai Chi Chuan began as a martial art, actually as a sort of village militia martial art, because of the number of thieves and wandering gangs and murderers and so forth in the area. But later people found that it had extraordinary health benefits. And that's the emphasis, which is that we find in the US and around the world today. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it did begin and remains a martial art. Qigong, on the other hand, has really a multifaceted beginning. It's always been important for healthcare, for self-care. It's always been important for athletic training. I had a quarterback from the Dallas Cowboys come out to train with me. I've had golf pros come out to train, baseball coaches and so forth. It's fantastic for athletic training, for conditioning, for reducing the likelihood of injury, for recovering more quickly from injury, for training the fast twitch muscle fibers. So if you're a boxer and you want to double your speed, let me tell you, Qigong is pretty darn amazing for that. So it's used for athletic skill, for healing, for many people study it because of the mental, psychological effects, the sense of deep peace and awareness that it creates, spiritual transformation. We know that many styles of Qigong began from Buddhists and Daoists, the two major spiritual traditions and philosophies of China. And I would even say one of the most important things is that we have a more healing, transformative presence in the world through doing Qigong. We develop a healing presence. If we have that, I think that overrides the benefits of just doing Qigong per se. If you'll forgive another anecdote, I do like to tell stories if you haven't guessed. One time I was visiting my dear teacher, Dr. Huang, the Daoist abbot, who made his living as an acupuncturist. And he was complaining to me. We were having breakfast together. He said, "Ken, I have so many clients and patients now that I don't have time to see them all when they need to see me. I've been feeling like a very irresponsible physician. You know, maybe he'd be booked up for 3 weeks, but the patient needs to see him that week. So I said, "Oh, Dr. Huang, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm happy that you're so popular." Then he got this mischievous look in his eye and he said, "But I found a solution." Now I knew I was going to get a wonderful teaching. I said, "What's that?" He said, "I call each of those patients that need to see me, and provided they are mobile, they can walk, they can move, and they don't have a contagious illness, I ask them to meet me in the local cafe." And I'm thinking, what is he getting at? I said, uh-huh. I shake hands with each of them. And I say, "How are you?
We could.
How are you?
It's a little bit weird.
How are you?"
We can perform right in that area
Then
right
we
there.
sit and
Do you
have
wanna
our
do that?
tea or coffee.
I'm just
And they
worried
call
about
me
the
back
setup.
later
We
that
have to
afternoon.
move
I don't know what
equipment
you did when you
inside.
said.
No, we'll have them
me,
go
Dr.
outside. We're
Huang,
gonna be
but you
sitting all
cancel
day.
my appointment.
Okay.
They can afford to go
So
outside.
what we're
I will
gonna-
direct them out there.
As
what
Dr.
we're gonna
Huang
do, we're
put
gonna
it, every
start-
contact with another
spoke
human
to
being
some of the
has
other folks.
potential for,
We're gonna
help.
start on either side of it to
or
get
for that matter, we have to admit,
after
potential
the
for harm.
Attorney General speaks,
Yeah.
we'll bow to the audience,
So
and then we'll.
if one develops a healing presence,
And then you can
every
tell them what
contact,
else happens.
even shaking
Okay.
hands, can be a way of de qi, reaching the qi, touching the life current. That's where healing happens. Whether you're feeling that current in yourself or you're working with someone else, that to me is the essence of healing. So let's keep that in mind as we look at the more kind of technical aspects of Qigong, which are indeed fascinating. It's just that that's not the whole story. It's not a matter of simply doing this or that.
Did-
The
did
lion
you
dance
not
just talked to me.
Feeling
So-
or touching that life.
Or on either side, you know, lead people out.
Effect is really,
And then,
really
whatever
minimal.
the period I've-
Qigong has just a few
10,
moments
so
of history.
I'm gonna walk him up,
It's
um,
got a very
I'm gonna
ancient
sing
history in
with
China.
him.
By 168
Like,
BC,
figures and what
we know that a large segment of the Chinese population were already practicing what today would be called Qigong. This is from a silk manuscript that was found rolled up in a tomb, half submerged in water. When they opened it up and dried it out, lo and behold, 44 postures, different things that are recognized today as Qigong, with the name of a disease under each. So people were already practicing this therapeutically to treat different conditions by 168 BC. And the other thing I find very significant is that when you look at these figures, I'm looking at it on my screen right here. You see those, it's guys without shirts. So there are poor farmers, there are members of nobility, young and old, male and female. And this suggests that by that early date, it was already practiced by a broad segment of the population, not reserved for the intellectuals or the elite or those who had access to special rare teachers. It was already popular back then. And I think that's just extraordinary. But it has its roots long before 168 BC. We would need to go back another minimum 3,000. I suspect it's more around 5,000 years earlier to find the earliest known information about Qigong. We see some evidence of this in pottery. You see that piece of pottery? That's from 5,000 years ago. And it shows a posture that anyone who's done Qigong can recognize very easily. It's a Jianzhuang or standing meditation posture with the arms in a rounded position at the sides of the body. You see it? I think it's should be big enough to see it. And we also see evidence of these, what I would call shamanic roots and early pre-Chinese medicine, one might say, roots of Qigong, even in the Chinese character for medicine or for doctor. Now, I take a somewhat unorthodox view. I am a scholar of Daoism and of Chinese medicine. And I think I can support this with enough evidence, but this is not an academic conference. I'm going to leave that aside. You'll be happy about that. That is the character E, doctor or medicine. Most people think that the bottom part of the character means a medicinal liqueur, maybe a tincture. So it suggests the importance of herbal medicine as a key and ancient component of Chinese medicine. And they see the upper part of the character as a quiver of arrows. That is correct. If you look at the early Jiao Wen, the oldest forms of the Chinese character, it looks like it's talking about acupuncture, the quiver of arrows being acupuncture needles, and Chinese herbs. Wrong. Forgive my outrageous opinion. I tend to speak my mind. People either like that or hate that about me. The bottom part of the character was a scribe's error. That's not the ancient word for medicine. Originally, on the bottom of the Chinese character was the word for a female shaman covered by feathers and with a rattle in her hand. In that case, if this Chinese character for medicine is linked with early Chinese shamanism, then what are those arrows? Any anthropologist, I'm sure, would give you the same answer. The arrows are the arrows of disease which the shaman energetically removes. They're not acupuncture needles. That came about somewhat later. So again, we see these shamanic roots of Qigong and Chinese medicine, which remain as an undercurrent today. And even in a classic of Chinese medicine, such as the Ben Cao, the classic work on Chinese herbal medicine, look at this quote that I found. The body channels, that is the acupuncture meridians, can only be perceived by those who turn their gaze inwards, illuminating the interior through Daoist meditation. This is my own translation. That means although you can get a general idea where a meridian or an acupoint is from its anatomical position, which you see in all the textbooks on Chinese medicine, that really isn't enough. You have to see it and feel it. So this text points to the importance of interior vision in being able to be a more effective doctor of Chinese medicine. This is where it links with indigenous cultures worldwide. So a few minutes of some, I think, very interesting cross-cultural views of healing energy. And I'm just giving you, again, the barest outline, because you could look at literally any country in the world and you're going to find a similar philosophy of healing. I had the great honor of meeting Lana Brandt. Anybody else here ever met him? Do you know who he is? He was the high priest of Lono, the spirit of agriculture and peace, one of the principal spiritual forces revered in Hawaii. Yeah, in Hawaii. So I got to meet him, and this is a quote from him. With mana, the life force, you perceive what life really means. You generate mana through prayer, through deep breathing, and through meditation. Does that sound kind of like Qigong? By the way, you all, have any of you been to Hawaii? Yeah? Do you know what the word means? It's good to know when you travel somewhere. I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it's good to find out more about the cultural context of those places. So Ha is the breath of life. When we say mana, there's a little more connection with the energy in the land. Ha is the breath of life. There are even healers called kahuna ha, masters of the breath, who heal primarily with the breath. Yeah, kahuna, by the way, doesn't mean healer. Kahuna means a master of a craft. If you say kahuna rather, it actually usually means a canoe builder. So if you say, oh, I know a kahuna. Oh, you know someone who builds canoes. That's what the word means. It means the master of a craft. You have to qualify it. If you say kahuna lapa'au, that's a healer. Or kahuna la'au lapa'au, that's an herbalist. Kahuna ha, breath of life, master of the breath, someone who heals through the breath. So Hawaii, ha is the breath. Vai means water. If you take vai and you double it, vai, that's the word for riches, being wealthy in Hawaiian. Yeah, vai is water, and e is the divine. So Hawaii, the divine place of the healing breath and beautiful waters. What a great name. Isn't that stunning? Just stunning. And if we go back to the most ancient form of healing known today, the San of South Africa, they believe that only if the mouth isn't wet enough, yeah, and it's spelled N-U-M, but you do a upper palate click with the initial N. Only if you gather that life force, which is stored in the lower abdomen. Yeah, just as in Qigong, stored in the lower abdomen and also the lower spine. If you gather it, then you stimulate it and heat it up through ecstatic dance, while simultaneously, in the words of the San, climbing a ladder to God, climbing a ladder to the divine. So you're in a state of communion. Only in that state where you have fully gathered that life energy can you be an effective limkausi, an effective energy healer. Doesn't that sound like Qigong? In many ways, I think so. So they also certainly recognized what in Chinese would be called Qi. I remember speaking to, some of you know I wear two hats. I'm also equally trained in Native American First Nations medicine since my youth. I was adopted by a Native family in my youth, and that's kind of the way I think. I'm a ceremonialist and been involved in this equally my whole life. So my first teacher in that tradition was Katua, who was the grandson of Ned Christie, well-known Cherokee leader. And I remember one time I was over at his house and I said, Katua, you know, in addition to my work in indigenous medicine, I actually make my living doing something else that I love. It's called Qigong and Taiji Chuan, and Chinese healing arts. He said, well, tell me about it. I started talking about it. When I described acupuncture, this is for real. He looked at me and said, Chinese people know about acupuncture? He actually said that. He didn't know. He always thought that that was old Cherokee medicine, where you stimulate particular areas on the body with needles, usually a thorn, like a rose thorn. Those traditions have been maintained by indigenous peoples. There's a certain fungus that grows in the far north, in Saskatchewan, for example, and Alberta. It's called the matchstick fungus. And part of their healing modality is you take it and you put it over specific points of the body and you burn it down to the bottom to increase therapeutic effect. What does that sound like? Moxa. Yeah. And this is without any influence from China. These were old techniques. Here's a 100-year-old Lacandon Maya medicine man who I know doing acupuncture with a needle made from a bone of the manatee, carved into a specific image to increase its therapeutic effect. The Mayan use of acupuncture in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras. I know I'm being recorded. Some people are going to get angry at me. It precedes Chinese medicine. It's older. So please don't tell me they must have brought it across the Bering Straits. No. Nor did the Mayan people teach the Chinese. These were parallel discoveries. But from my research, the Mayan use of acupuncture is actually quite a bit older. So going back to away from our cross-cultural, I'll try to speed things up a bit and not tell as many stories. What we're interested here really is that interface between arts like Qigong and Chinese medicine. And most people call that medical Qigong. That term is okay. That concept, though, really began around 1950. Even though Qigong has a long history, the concept, actually the term Qigong is recent. It wasn't called Qigong before 1950. It was called either Yang Sheng, Dao Jia Yang Sheng Shu, Daoist arts of nurturing life, or Dao Yin, leading and guiding the Qi. There were other terms used. But around 1950, in order to preserve these ancient healing exercise and meditative traditions during a time when various aspects of traditional Chinese culture were at least temporarily illegal in China. Two friends, Liu Guizhen, who's often called the father of modern acupuncture, along with his friend Hu Yaozhen, who was both a doctor of Chinese medicine, Daoist priest, and unparalleled martial artist. The two of them got together and rebranded these ancient healing exercises as Qigong, giving it a kind of boring name, energy skill, and also created the term Yigong, medical Qigong. So again, the exercises are very ancient, but just the terminology is quite recent. And of course, the interest in this was really stimulated during the Nixon administration, when for the first time, physicians from Harvard, this is documented, by the way, in David Eisenberg's book, Encounters with Qi. Some of you know it, it's worth reading. Physicians from Harvard went to China and observed not only acupuncture, but Qigong anesthesia, where people were having gastrectomies and thyroidectomies painlessly. I'm not recommending this for you, okay? I'm just giving you an anecdote, with the Qigong master pointing his or her fingers at an acupuncture point or a series of acupuncture points to induce anesthesia. It's also been used in dental surgery. So that, of course, greatly stimulated the interest in these Chinese healing arts. Now, what scientists today are really interested in worldwide, not just in the West, but certainly equally in China, is whether or not Qi can be measured and whether or not we can measure the effects of practicing Qigong. This is why when I started, I said we're beyond the burden of proof, because there is so much that can be measured. And there are so many thousands upon thousands of studies that if your physician is not aware of this, they're living in the Stone Age. They need to get up to date and just read their own literature. So just to give you a few ideas, look, we can't measure Qi. Thought you said you could measure it. Well, sort of. You can measure what Qi is in and of itself. Because Qi, the term Qi is used in many contexts. If you see a beautiful sunrise like we had this morning, that has Qi. If you see a painting where you feel the pine tree has drawn itself, has used the artist's brush to draw itself, when you look at that pine, you are experiencing the pine tree. That work of art has Qi. If you read a great poem, what's the criteria, ancient criteria for judging a poem in Chinese? It has Qi Yun. It has a resonance with the life force. So when you read whatever, Qian shan niao fei jue, wang jing ren zong mie, gu zhou sou li wang du diao han jiang xue, 1,000 mountains, not a bird. 10,000 trails, not a footprint. Alone in a boat, an old man in straw raincoat, fishing through the cold river snow. You're immersed in the feeling. That is also an example of Qi. So that's why I said we can't measure Qi, but we can measure the effect of Qigong stimulation, Qigong exercises on our instrumentation. And what we are seeing are the correlates of Qi, even if it is not the definition of Qi itself as something that is measurable. So a simple example, thunder is a correlate of lightning. It's not the same as lightning. But when you hear the thunder, you know there's lightning, and vice versa. So there are correlates of Qi. They go together. What are some of those correlates? There are biochemical correlates, such as the body's anti-aging hormone, DHEA. When DHEA goes up, cortisol goes down. That is, the stress hormone goes down as your anti-aging hormone goes up. They're in an inverse relationship. And we know that doing Qigong can increase your body's levels of this anti-aging hormone. We know that your body has more free radical scavenging, that doing Qigong is like taking a massive dose of vitamin C. We can measure that through effects on a chemical called superoxide dismutase. Again, it's been proven in many experiments. We can measure changes in endorphin levels, your body's good mood chemicals. Melatonin, that's now kind of cutting edge science relationship between melatonin and cancer and other diseases, and the way biological dysregulation is related to being out of touch with the rhythms of nature. So our melatonin levels are not optimized. We know that Qigong has an effect on melatonin, puts you more in touch with nature, to put it simply. Prevents the effects of reactive oxygen on the cells, prevents what's called oxidative stress. And we can measure, this is an area that really interests me, effects on osteocalcin. It's a hormone generated in the bones through exercise, and it seems to be a really master regulator that prevents muscle loss. Also has neurological effects. So it seems that doing Qigong or Tai Chi Chuan will help prevent cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's. And, oh, who's that guy? I think I look exactly the same, don't I? Yeah, that's me at age 16 when I was starting to practice Tai Chi Chuan. So brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a very important brain chemical that's produced when you have a synergy of the following factors: body awareness, sensory awareness, spatial awareness, and the executive function of the brain. That is, for example, knowing where you are in a choreography. That sounds exactly like Tai Chi Chuan or Qigong. So when you have those factors together, you're producing more of this important brain chemical. Why is that chemical important? Because if you have more of that chemical through doing something like Qigong or Tai Chi Chuan, then you have less depression and anxiety, less degeneration of the neurons. You maintain cognitive health, mental functioning with advancing age, improves brain plasticity. So this is one of many important reasons to practice, and why it's in a certain sense measurable. Yeah, we're measuring correlates. And I have a theory that these measurable factors occur more easily when we are practicing outdoors, because of what we know already about the effect of outdoor exercise compared to working out in the gym. And there are electrical correlates, changes in electrical flows on and around the body, changes in brain waves, right? That's a measure of the electrical activity of the brain. When someone's practicing Qigong, your brain waves slow down. So instead of being on a stormy sea where there are a lot of waves hitting the shore per given period of time, there's less waves. It's a quiet sea. So that's like slow brain waves. We know that when you practice Qigong, we downshift from the quick beta brain waves, which is really a sign of free-floating anxiety. Unfortunately, it's far too common. It's almost a chronic state in our society. We downshift down to alpha and theta, which means you're in a more relaxed state. And extraordinarily, you can learn to produce delta brainwaves, the slowest brainwaves normally only seen when you're in such a deep sleep that you're not even dreaming. You can produce that consciously while fully awake. You also see delta brainwaves, by the way, in infants. As you get older, you produce quicker brainwaves until you have more intellectual capacity by about age 12. Then you start seeing a lot of beta. So if you are downshifting to delta, the ultra slow, ultra quiet brainwaves as a result of doing Qigong, what are you doing? You are re-accessing the vitality and wisdom of childhood. 返老还童，就是返老还童的意思, right? This is part of the hidden meaning in a very common Chinese saying about Qigong, that you're reversing old age and returning to youth. And we can now measure some aspects to explain the mechanism of effect, how that happens. And there have been, I know we're getting close to time, there have been numerous experiments to show this downshift of brain waves. I was a research subject in one of these, where you had 600 sessions with people who had claimed no particular ability or knowledge in energy healing. And then among 9 noted healers, while practicing NCTT, non-contact therapeutic touch, transmitting energy without touching the client, they produced frequent surges of electricity on the body, measured with sensitive electrometers of between 4 and 190 volts. That is not a misprint. That's not microvolts or millivolts. And the brain waves also extraordinary. When you find, this is not the brain waves yet. Okay, excuse me. This is other ways of looking at what happened, graphs that show the change in electricity from a baseline reading here of 17 volts down to approximately 2 volts. So 15-volt spike measured with an electrode on the body while doing non-contact healing. That's not supposed to happen, but it does. It means our science, conventional science, has not yet fully explained it. But we should not dismiss the phenomena because it doesn't match pre-existing theory. You understand what I'm saying? If we reject the phenomena because it doesn't match pre-existing theory, that is the opposite of science. And brainwaves as well, I was able to produce an amplitude of brainwave that was actually beyond their scale of measurement during this was when I was practicing Xiao Zhou Tian, small heavenly orbit, where you're circulating the qi through major meridians in the body. Then I was retested at the University of Missouri, and again, very unusual brainwaves compared to baseline. And I'm not anything or anyone unusual. Anybody can learn to do this. There are psychological, social effects, decreased depression, decreased hostility, decreased anxiety, decreased loneliness, greater sense of self-efficacy, that you can better manage your own health. Other things being equal, if you feel you have better control over your own health, your own well-being, the outcome of whatever even medical treatment you're getting is going to be better than if you feel at the mercy of the medical system. So through Qigong, we have a much greater sense that we can control and manage our own state of well-being. And there's also epigenetic evidence. Now, some people might say, well, what about genes? Genes are responsible only for a very small portion of adult diseases. I mean, at most 25%. And if you're talking about a single gene cause, you're looking at 1%. There have been plenty of studies that have been published in Western medical journals to show effects of Qigong on DNA. So if you think that you're doomed to get whatever, breast cancer, prostate cancer, heart disease, because your parents and your grandparents had it, only if you are living the same way, only if you're eating the same food, only if you're exercising or not exercising the same way, then you're going to trigger the same genetic factors that might be causing those diseases. But if you can manage your health through lifestyle, including things like Qigong, the chance of developing what some people are calling a genetic disease is really very, very low. Again, lots of research to show it, that Qigong will even counter mutagenic changes in the cells that can lead to cancer. I love this last sentence in this published study. Our findings are relatively consistent with those found in the study of Qigong, a practice that elicits the relaxation response. New England Journal of Medicine, showing that Qigong creates mitochondrial resilience so that your cells spring back to health. And then there's linking with transpersonal forces, such as the energy of the earth, as I mentioned, by practicing outdoors. Look at all of these wonderful studies that have been published just in the past few years of what's called earthing. You can look it up online. We don't have time to go into the details of this. But basically, when you are in touch with the earth, to put it very simply, when you're in touch with the ground, you have less inflammation, and there are measurable effects on disease, just from sensing the ground under your feet. As simple as that, or as complex as that, because it does take training. We're not a very grounded society. I'll give you an example. Think of your favorite teacher in school, maybe a professor or a high school teacher, whatever. Got their image in your mind? How many of you saw that person's feet? It proves teachers don't have feet. No, it doesn't prove that. Because we're such an upward focused society. I sometimes walk around, if my spiritual eyes are open, it looks to me that most of the people I see on the streets, they got big left hemispheres like this. I'm wondering how they're standing balanced. They should be holding, they need a wheelbarrow to hold their left hemisphere. You know, that's the intellectual part of the brain. And the right brain is so shrunken. That's partly from being out of touch with the ground. Yeah. So anyway, lots of research to show that, even effects on sleep, effects on the electrical conductivity of the cells, which has a lot to do with oxygen delivery. But you know, the question we always get, I know we're a few minutes away, is does Qigong really work clinically? Does it treat illness? Look at this. There are over 5,000 studies cited in the National Institutes of Health PubMed research database, and over 1,300 citations of Qigong. I'll just let you do a quick browse of some of the studies that I'm talking about out of those many thousands. There's even a study that's been done on Qigong on periodontal disease. The effects are just extraordinary. A few more. Qigong for fibromyalgia. Effect of Qigong on survivors of torture and refugee trauma. Arthritis, osteoarthritis. Antidepressive effects of Qigong. Qigong for cancer-related pain. And again, supported by just so much research. This is the kind of material that I do present at medical schools. I just want to, I know, because we're getting close to time, give you a quick summary. Just let you browse those. Again, a very impressive research on Qigong for diabetes. You know, after only 1 month of Qigong practice, blood glucose levels decreased in 95% of the practitioners. Why isn't your doctor recommending Qigong for diabetes and for some of these other conditions? I'm not saying as a substitute for insulin as long as it's needed. I'm not saying as a substitute for Western medical treatment. I'm saying in addition to. To me, it's almost criminal that they are not learning more about Qigong and about Chinese medicine in general. Effects on preventing stroke and on cardiovascular disease. That is still the major, cardiovascular disease is still the major killer of our times. US Department of Health found that 50% of Americans above age 20, 50% above age 20 have signs of cardiovascular disease. We need to do something about that. It has, to me, it has a lot to do with stress, diet, the biggest factor, and not knowing how to take care of ourselves. Metabolically, internally. Nothing wrong with exercising at the gym. I do it. It's important, but it's not enough. We need external health and internal health. And internal health is what we get through Qigong. But again, some people will say, well, it must just be placebo effect. If the teacher has a Chinese uniform and claims some extraordinary lineage, then we're likely to believe it's going to be effective. How do we eliminate placebo effect? That is the effect of expect and trust. Well, you can eliminate it through animal experimentation, but how do you teach an animal to do Qigong? I was somewhat successful teaching, one squirrel to do a Taiji Chuan and another one to do Jianzhuang. No, actually, I didn't teach them to do that. These were just random photos that were taken. Look, you can't teach an animal to do Qigong, but here's where the other aspect of Qigong becomes important. You can do Qi healing, transmit Qi to an animal. And we know that receiving Qi from a healer has similar effects to doing Qigong for oneself. So if you could show that the animal is being cured of whatever disease or significantly improves because the Qi healer has his or her hands near that animal, then we assume that it's not because these were super intelligent mice or rabbits who believe in the power and authority of the healer. So it basically eliminates placebo effect. And we've got, again, tons of evidence. I mean, injecting, I don't like animal experiments, but I do read the literature, injecting cancer cells into mice and looking at the effect on tumor growth. Very, very significant in the treated group, treated by a Qi healer, compared to the non-treated group. The list goes on and on. Liver cancer. Even in cell cultures, you take brain cells from rats and you subject them to something that should destroy the cells, but some of those cells are treated by the Qi healer, and those cells that were treated by the Qi healer, the damage is prevented. How do we explain that? Something is happening. We have 5 minutes. Okay. So, in summary, what are some of the areas where Qigong has been found effective, according to at least the evidence that I've read? Cardiovascular, respiratory conditions, improved circulation. Easy to measure, by the way. Use a photoelectric earlobe sphygmograph. Shine a laser beam through the earlobe. The attenuation, the diminishment of light at the other end of the earlobe is an indication of circulation, blood circulation in the earlobe. It's very difficult to improve circulation in the tips of the fingers, right? A lot of people have cold hands and feet, or in the earlobe. Well, if Qigong results in more circulation and better oxygen delivery to areas distant from the heart, and as a result, having wider blood vessels and more blood flowing through them and more oxygen is preventing the laser beam from being emitted from the other side of the fingertip, you've got a way, this is a medical device, you've got a way of actually measuring how Qigong is affecting things like oxygen delivery and circulation. So again, all of these things is not hearsay. This is supported by good evidence, effects on the brain, on neurological health, on mental health, on longevity. And what I would say is the most important benefit of all, I haven't found it mentioned in the literature, this is my own idea, but I think you'll agree with me. That is greater enjoyment of life. If Qigong is reducing joie de vivre, if it's making you say, oh, well, this is supposed to be good for me, kind of like jogging, which I really don't want to do either, but it's supposed to be good for me, forget it. I think you probably got the wrong teacher or haven't found the right style of Qigong. It will increase joy of life and increase appreciation of what you don't know. You understand what I'm saying? People say, oh no, knowledge is the source of happiness. I don't think so. I don't think so. In fact, I would say the opposite.
Bob.
Appreciation of what cannot be known. Please, somebody explain to me exactly what love is. You see what I'm saying? Or what enjoyment of raising your kids.
The acupuncture guy.
What is that? You can't explain it. No one will ever explain it. So I think if Qigong can increase appreciation of mystery, that can vastly improve our quality of life. Albert Einstein said it best. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom, he should say he or she, to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes.
Catch your breath.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
And closing here with a
Right.
tribute to my teachers. There's my beloved teachers passed on, Dr. Huang, Daoist abbot and Buddhist master as well. That was me with him at the end of my
When he's ready,
apprenticeship
walk the rep-
in
walk him up there.
1984. Madam Gao, she looks pretty good. You see that
I'm gonna
picture of her in the
introduce-
Tai Chi
introduce him.
posture by herself? That's an
While you're
80-year-old
introducing,
woman.
We're gonna bring you stuff back.
There's me practicing with her and her teacher, Feng Zhu Chan. And my first Qigong teacher, BP Chan. And with that, friends, I would like to thank you. We went, I think, about 5 minutes over. Hope that's okay. It's been an honor speaking with you. You can find my website. I've got business cards on Dr. Brady's table over there. And I hope we get to practice Qigong. If not together, you find a good teacher and enjoy it. Thank you so much.